Good day to everybody. My name is Sarah McChesney, and on behalf of Protect Training, I welcome you to today's webinar, COVID-19, A Time for Innovation. Please feel free to send us any questions during the webinar, and our expert will be happy to answer them at the end of his presentation. You will find the question area in the top right-hand corner of your screen within the control panel. But for now, please let me introduce you to our presenter. Kumar Dattatrayan is a ICF certified professional coach. He has decades of experience coaching teams and executives on the power of the agile mindset to help guide them in achieving their goals. He helps businesses implement lean and agile thinking and processes into their organizations. He has used open book management, theory of constraints, and other methods to help organizations identify their biggest challenges and to develop plans to best address them. With no further ado, I bring you Kumar Dattatrayan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, it's afternoon for me here in Alexandria, Virginia. I'm going to be talking about a time for innovation and how we can utilize this time of COVID to not only survive this tremendous downturn in business, but also to thrive in the future. So I am a partner of Protect. Thank you for that warm introduction, Sarah. And through our partnership, we at Agile Meridian specialize in lean agile coaching and training. And as it says there, to help people realize the value and promise of an agile mindset. I've been doing this for, I'd say, probably close to 20 years now. Not all in an agile context. I used to run restaurants in a prior life. But certainly in the last 20 years or so, it's been more from an agile and lean perspective. Our agenda today, so we're all in the midst of this disruption in our lives, a tremendous disruption in our lives. And so our agenda really is to take stock of, as business owners, as individuals, as executives, as leaders, as managers, as employees, whatever your situation is really to take stock of your current situation, your current condition, and then to sort of imagine what the future is going to look like. COVID is going to create opportunities for people that can see beyond where we are today. And so where will your company look like a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Where will you be as an individual a year from now or more? And once you've sort of charted this longer term vision as to where you want to go, then what steps can you take now, right now, to get there? And it's not about getting to that 5-year plan or 1-year plan or whatever in a week or two. That's impossible. It's about taking small steps on your journey to this ultimate vision or ultimate goal that you've created for yourself. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about open book management and how it's a really extremely powerful technique to open the books really to your employees, to unleash the power of your workforce to help you achieve the future that you're imagining, to help you achieve not only your short-term wins, but also to help them, your employees, achieve their dreams and their goals, right, as part of your company. All right, so let's get started. So our first topic is taking stock. So what do we mean by this, taking stock? And it's not what you see there in the picture, we can't even do that, right? I guess we can with our masks on, but it's really more about taking stock of the world we live in today. And, well, we live in a VUCA world. And for those of you that are familiar with this, and for those of you that aren't, VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it is credited to the Army War College, where in '87 it was defined as a strategic leadership environment in terms of of these words: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, that defines the world that we live in. And it has been later used to describe was later adopted really by strategic business leaders to describe the chaotic, turbulent, and rapidly changing business environment that we find ourselves in. And how much more appropriate could you get to the world that we live in today? We live in a VUCA world, never more so than the disruption that we're all experiencing with COVID-19. The world is volatile. It is certainly uncertain. We don't know when it's going to end. We don't know when a vaccine will be developed. We don't know what treatments are going to be effective in treating people that have it. And we certainly don't know when all this will be over. It's certainly a complex world because of the disruptions caused to so many industries. It's created a sense of ambiguity. There's so much overwhelm that is consuming us that we're not really sure what to do next and how to prioritize what the most important things to do are. And so, of course, there are global challenges. Our world has never been more interconnected than it is today. Global economies never more interlinked than they are today. And the things that we sell and the things that we buy are connected to different parts of the globe. You buy something from Amazon, chances are it's comes from China or someplace, right, across the globe. And so our economies and our marketplaces are all intricately intertwined. And so when something like COVID hits, or the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, it causes a global disruption. And those types of disruptions aren't going to get less in time. They're going to actually increase as we become ever more interconnected, as the world shrinks and becomes ever smaller. So what do we do? Well, one of the first things, as I mentioned, is to assess the current state. As a leader, as a business owner, the idea is to, first of all, figure out, okay, where are you in terms of your employees? Because your employees are the lifeblood of your business. So how are they doing? How are they dealing with the stress of working from home, right? How are they coping with it? Your existing policies, work from home policies, PTO policies, sick policies, would you change any of those things, given the current circumstances? And are any changes to the work from home? People that are working from home also have to contend with kids that are home from school, right? Learning at home. They have to contend with being a part-time parent and a part-time worker and so on and so forth. So how do those policies change, or do they, right? So rather than a strict 9-to-5 schedule, are there things you could do to lessen the impact on your employees so they can continue to be productive by working more flexible hours throughout the day and maybe some hours in the evening? Because I'll guarantee you that's what they're doing anyway. So it might be worthwhile to just examine how things are going. Talk to your employees, be more collaborative in terms of understanding what their needs are to make their lives a little easier dealing with this. Okay, and then there's the customer impact, right? So there are, if you are a digital business, or if you own and run a digital operation, then certainly people can still find you. But if you're not, if you're a brick and mortar store, then it's harder for people to find you. So it's important to understand where your customers come from. And whether you are digital or not, it's important to analyze, are they still able to find you? Are your websites customer friendly? What are you doing differently now to reach them? And then really from a lean and agile perspective, what is your biggest bottleneck in terms of customers being able to find you? can you assess your bottlenecks? You know, maybe maybe your biggest bottleneck is really in acquiring customers, right, from a marketing perspective, because you were doing it differently before. Well, are there things that you can do to attract customers through different means, different channels, different medium? And how would you know how those different channels and medium are working? So it's a matter of doing some analysis of your how you get customers into your door, you know, virtual door or physical door, and then looking for ways to improve the experience your customers have when they do find you, and encourage them to buy from you or consume the services that you provide. All right, so then of course there's the revenue impact, right? So do you have plans for an impact of a 25% reduction in revenue, 50%, 75%? What would that look like? And what do you need to keep? What is the core that you need to keep in place to be able to survive up to 75% reduction in revenue? It may be a good time to revisit your business disruption insurance plans, or just insurance in general. This is not a webinar intended to go over all the intricacies of the government stimulus package and the PPP loans that are available out there to folks. It's merely to talk about those things are available. And are you considering all sources of revenue? That's not really revenue, but things to stave off a reduction in revenue, like disruption insurance or government loans, things like that. And then on the flip side, you know, connected with the customer impact, new markets, new products, new revenue streams, all these things are opening up. You know, take a look at Zoom, for instance, or GoToWebinar, the platform that we're using today. These companies have exploded in terms of new markets, new products, new revenue streams, right? I mean, it wasn't new for them, it was their core product, but because of the disruption caused by COVID, their business has exploded. And so how can you take advantage of new sources of revenue, of maybe by developing new products or new channels, new marketing segments that you haven't explored before because it just wasn't feasible at the time or it wasn't needed at the time, right? So those are things to think about. What about your cash position? Evaluate your balance sheets. See where you can cut discretionary spending, which I'm sure most people have already done that, right? So there's no travel anymore. So for companies that budget quite a bit of travel, that's gone. But where else can you limit spending? But it's important to note that it's still important to spend money on innovative ideas, innovative practices. What are the things that you can do to open new markets? All right. And then your business continuity plans, right? So how are your employees set up to work from home? I'm sure before COVID-19, it was, you know, take your laptop at home and just work from anywhere. But if this is going to be something that is more the norm rather than the exception, then it might be worthwhile investing in a more permanent setup so people can work from home effectively, where the productivity can be as good or better than if they were in the office. Because, you know, really at the end of the day, your employees, as I mentioned, are your lifeblood, and their productivity is directly attributable to your business success. So can they work from home? It's not just that, oh yeah, we can work from home, but can they really work from home? And then it's a matter of investing in cross-training. You know, maybe it's investing in cross-training in areas that you don't have a deep bench in the skills that you need. You know, maybe people need to learn new skills because again, the market's changed, everything's changed. And so it's about cross-training and maybe new skills training for your employees, for yourselves, right? So you can learn things that are more relevant today than they ever were. I just had a conversation with someone about shifting training to an online platform. Especially in the Agile community, a lot of our training is done face-to-face over some number of days. But we can't do that anymore. And so we have to pivot. We, as in me, I have to pivot. I have to change how I approach training people, how I approach delivering knowledge to people. And it's hard to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours a day and learn things. And so we've pivoted to delivering workshops in small bites, small segments, spread over days and weeks rather than in 2 days. And so this makes it easier for both people consuming this knowledge. It also makes it easier for people not only to consume the knowledge, but also to use it, practice it. And so it's about business continuity. How do you keep the money coming in, right? And so it's important that you start to think about that because we don't know how long this existing situation is going to last. And then finally, we're going to end with leadership. Right? So all of you are leaders, whether you know it or not. Whether you lead a team or you lead a department, a division, a company, or yourselves, you're still leading. You're still leading something. So it's important to take a step back and practice some self-awareness. How are you communicating with your people? It's important to show concern with the people that you lead, but not to convey any sense of panic, because that's just going to cause people to be more concerned and maybe cause them to panic. And then it's about the topics that you communicate about. What are you talking about? It's important to be very selective about the things that you talk about while respecting the idea that being as transparent as you can is important. So being clear, being concise, and being an effective communicator goes a long way to alleviating fears from the people that work for your company or work with you or work for you. And then finally, how are you taking care of not just the people who report to you, but taking care of yourself, right? Are you taking the breaks that you need? Are you meditating? Are you going for walks? Are you taking mindfulness breaks? Because face it, we're all faced with a tremendous sense of overwhelm in our lives, especially now with the news that's coming in all the time, 24/7 nonstop about COVID or about some effect with COVID. The numbers of people, the tens of thousands of people that have lost their lives, it is enough to affect us emotionally and ultimately affect us physiologically, because those emotional connections in the brain affect us from a physiological perspective as well. So take the time to take care of yourself. And if you take care of yourself, you'll be able to take care of your families and take care of your employees, because they're part of your extended family as well. All right, so there is a little assessment worksheet that will be distributed, I think, at the end of this session. And so it gives you sort of a checklist to follow in those sort of broad categories that we talked about: employees, your customers, business continuity, supply chain disruptions, and planning for how you keep your business afloat, and so on. And so you'll get that at the end of this session. So once you've done this assessment, then it's about, all right, so what does the future look like? Right? So, I mean, you don't have to think of this as a linear process. This is something that you could sort of go back and forth between these steps all day long, right? But it's really thinking about, okay, where are we going to be? Where am I going to be as a business owner, as a leader, as a manager of my team, whatever your role is, a year from now, 2 years from now? And so there's some tools that you can use, right? But the most important thing is to define your why. What is your why? Maybe you have one. Maybe it's time to redefine it. Why are you here? I mean, I don't mean here as in this webinar, but why are you doing what you do? Why do you have the business that you have? What is the purpose of the business? What is the belief? What's the vision? Does that need to be redefined in some way? Has it changed because of the situation that we find ourselves in? And if it has, what would you change about it? There are some tools. One we use quite frequently in the Agile community and Lean community is what's called the elevator pitch. The idea is that you're stuck in an elevator with someone for 30 to 60 seconds, and someone turns around to you and says, "So, what do you do?" And the idea is that you'd be able to give them your pitch. What is it that you do? What is your vision? Why you exist? Who are your target customers? What are the key benefits you provide them? And most importantly, engage them with a question at the end. It could be, "So what do you think about that?" And so that conversation can extend beyond the elevator, so they can really understand who you are, why you exist. And I don't mean that from an existential standpoint, but why you exist in the work that you do, and what value do you bring to your customers. And there's a little template there, which will be part of the handout that you are emailed. And so it's really to think about, okay, so why do we exist? And is our existence now changed because of COVID? Do we need to redefine that? Another useful exercise is this thing that we do in workshops with our clients, and it's called a postcard from the future. And while the elevator pitch is really from your perspective, like why do I exist? The postcard from the future is you're putting yourself in the shoes of your customer and putting yourself in their shoes a year from now, 2 years from now, and they've sent you a postcard about all these cool new things that you're doing to engage them, that they are so happy with, right? So it's explore discovery of your product, your company, from your customer's perspective rather than your own. It's not about you so much, it's about their experience. And so imagine your customer a year from now with this great new product that came out of this vision, this new vision that you created. What would they say about it? So this is a good, powerful workshop that we run to help leadership teams try to figure out, okay, are we on the right track? And if we are, what would our customers say about us? So you crafted a new vision. How will you implement it? Right, so you've defined the why. You've defined the why from both your perspective, from a company perspective, individual perspective, and the why from a customer perspective. The reason they are enamored with your products is, well, you've sort of empathized with them. So now, well, how do you get this to happen? Well, the business model canvas, I'm sure you've seen this and heard of it. It's a popular tool, a strategic tool. Again, a workshop. And by the way, these workshops I'm talking about, they don't need to be done in person. We've been doing a lot of workshops in a remote setting using online tools that allow people in distributed environments to interact as if they're in the same room together and talk about, okay, so what are the customer segments we want to target? What relationships do we have today, customer relationships, and what do we want to develop in the future? What channels do we use today, and what channels do we want to target in the future? What's our value proposition? All of these things are part of what you would consider in a workshop. And this is the how. This is more along the lines of, okay, how are we going to sort of reposition, reshape our business and our business proposition to be successful in the future, whether this future is post-COVID or just successful in the future in general. And so you've got a good idea of this sort of imagining the future, right? And charting the course for how you get there. But it's still ambiguous. There's lots of options out there floating around. So how do you turn that ambiguity into some clarity? And that's the topic of our next section. And I call it WIGs, or wildly important goals. What is the one or two things that are so important that you can't ignore them? That's exactly what you need to do. So when you're talking about the what, it's about your goals. And you're thinking in terms of the next quarter. You may even think in terms of the next month or the next 2 weeks. What's the one thing I need to do in the next 2 weeks to ensure that I'm in a better position 2 weeks from now than I am today. But generally, these things are a little longer term than that. It's generally a quarter. And so what do these things look like? What tools can you use? Well, there's the feasibility importance matrix. It's good to engage your team, right? Okay, what are the ideas that are out there? And put it on this feasibility importance matrix. And the things that show up over here are the things that are wildly important and highly feasible that you want to work on first in this quadrant, where things that are maybe over here, less important, less feasible, don't worry about those things. This brings clarity out of ambiguity. This is where you need to focus, in this area of the quadrant. Again, another workshop that we can help our clients with. And so extending the wildly important goals metaphor, right? So the super hunch zone, this is another template, if you will. So taking those ideas and extending them. Okay, who are the customers? Well, who are you, in terms of the company? Well, you already have that. You have the beginnings of that. Who are you offering it to? Who are the customers? What are your key competencies in that area? And what is it that you're going to offer them? So this is just sort of an evolution of that feasibility importance matrix that you can use to start to think about, what do we need to do over the next 3 months? There's OKRs, objectives with key results, popularized by Andy Grove at Google when he was consulting there, and used by lots of companies. So the idea is that you are creating these objectives, which I think of as these wildly important goals, right? They're aspirational in nature, and you're measuring them with metrics, with key measures that say that allow you to measure both the path that you're taking to get to the result, the outcome, and the result itself, right? So leading and lagging indicators for those metrics. And a template here that we can distribute afterwards. So these objectives and key results are a way for you to align your people as well. So you make these things visible. This is our goal, our objective, and these are the ways we measure it. And if people know how they're being measured, they're going to do everything they can to meet those wildly important goals. It's important also that, in terms of the number, I said 2 to 3. I really mean 2 to 3 wildly important goals, even though this thing says 3 to 5. You want this to be as crisp and clear as possible. We're going to work on these 2 to 3 things. That's it, or less if your time frame is even shorter than 3 months. And finally, we're going to close out with a short section on open book management. So what is open book management? So you might imagine it's opening the books, right? But what can you open? I mean, in some cases you can't open the books, right? So what do you open in order to have this considered open book management? So OBM is really a mindset. It's a way of running a company that engages employees in making money for themselves, for the company. So you're leveraging your workforce, you're multiplying yourself through your employees. You're teaching them how to understand the economics of the business that you're in, teaching them how to track and forecast key numbers. Very analogous to what we just talked about, the OKRs and the wildly important goals. It's a way to publish and make transparent, hey, this is where we're headed. This is where we're headed in the next 3 months, and this is how we know we're going to get there. The whole point is to get them thinking about how what they do, the work that they do, contribute to improving the company. You get them focused on throughput, top line throughput. How do the things that I do as an employee, or you do as an employee, move the top line throughput for your company? And when I mean top line and throughput, I mean top line revenue and throughput in terms of your services, your products that you sell to your customers. think of throughput as a highway. How do you put more cars on the highway and get those cars to move to your customers? So it's about throughput, and it's about opening the books. And certainly you only disclose information necessary to accomplish the goal of galvanizing your workforce. You wouldn't disclose information about salaries and bonuses, although some companies do that, right? They make their everything's transparent, including salaries, including the bonus structure. But I'm not suggesting that that's the way to do it. I'm just saying that there are levels of open book management that you can employ to really galvanize your workforce, and you don't need to make everything transparent to get the benefits of it. So there are lots of case studies out there. There's some references at the end of this presentation, but really the results are more engaged employees. One of the many ills of corporate culture in this country and many others is a lack of engagement. Recent studies show that less than 30% of the workforce is engaged, which means that 70% are just there for a paycheck, right? What would you rather have? You want the 30% or you want the 70%? I think most companies, most leaders, most people want to be engaged. It's just there's not much to be engaged about, right? Because you're just another cog in the machine, and you don't really know why you're there or in what way the work that you do helps the company reach their goals. It's all very obtuse and very opaque in terms of why am I here and what do I do to help myself and the company. So open book management allows you to get a much more engaged workforce. It does require a different leadership model, right? Managers, leaders are more coaches than they are directive managers. So because you're empowering your workforce with information that is vital to the survival of the company, you're empowering them to make decisions for themselves. It's a very anti-Tayloristic view of the world where, oh my God, people can actually make decisions for themselves. But this is the way of agile and lean work. It's about decentralizing decisions to where the people that are doing the work should be allowed to make decisions about what they work on. And so it's really empowering that. And so what do leaders do? What do managers do? They're more coaches, mentors, guides to the people that are doing the work. They're developing new leaders. That's what coaches should be doing anyway, is developing leaders. And it results in improved customer satisfaction, right? So if you have the vision, you have the sort of the path to get there, and you're talking to your customers, you're understanding their needs and their wants and their desires, and you've galvanized your workforce, you've opened the books, of course customers are going to be more happy. Of course they're going to want more of your services. Results in true business agility. And business agility is, I think of it as the ability for a business to pivot quickly, responding to changes in the marketplace. And there's no better example of the need for business agility than the time we live in right now, right? Because we all need to change to the marketplace, the current business environment. And my view is that it's not going to return to any sort of normal what we used to have ever again. Business models are going to change. And people want to work for companies that are transparent and trusting of their people. Why wouldn't you? So it puts the companies that utilize this method at a competitive advantage, allowing them to attract talent that would otherwise go somewhere else, right? It's certainly more fun to work with a company like that, and ultimately it results in higher company valuations, whether the company is public or private, it doesn't matter. The company is worth more because they're generating more value in the marketplace for their people, for their employees, and for their customers. Lots of links here. You will get the you will get the this deck at the end of this presentation, which, by the way, I'm almost at the end of. So I'm just going to close with this slide here. When faced with VUCA, it's important to respond with VUCA prime. So respond to volatility with vision, eye to the future. We talked about that earlier in this session. When faced with uncertainty, it's important to respond with understanding. Understand the emotional impact in terms of, in the case of COVID, that the emotional impact it has on your people and yourselves, right? Understand the interconnections between your employees and your customers. Make those interconnections transparent. Reflect on the context of the world that we live in today, this COVID world. Begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to get to? And then work backwards, which is kind of what we talked about, right? To create a vision, and then work backwards. Start from a postcard from the future, work backwards. Complexity, respond with clarity and simplicity. So work in smaller increments of, say, a quarter, maybe even less if it makes sense, and especially in these times. And then work backwards. Focus on what is going to provide the biggest impact in allowing your business or yourselves to thrive. And then finally, ambiguity. Respond with adaptability, agility, flexibility. Scrutinize how you are currently structured in your organizations. Scrutinize your hierarchical approaches of decision making. And come up with new ways to work that empower your people, again, galvanizing your workforce. All right, that's really all I have, and I will stop talking and wait for any questions.
Thanks, Kumar. Yes, we do have a few questions. The first one is, how do we plan for anything when everything is so unpredictable?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I think that some of the lessons that we talked about in this webinar apply here perfectly well, right? So everything is unpredictable, but all you can do is plan for what you know now. And so it's about getting your people, your leadership team, your team, whatever your context is, getting them together virtually with masks on if you're together in a room, and assessing the impact of the ideas that people have to navigate to the next step. Again, you can't get to the end unless you start somewhere. So where everything is unpredictable, it's sort of trying something. It's almost like what we call in the agile industry a lean startup approach, right? It's a chaotic environment. All you can do is do something, act on something, and then sense and respond to the results that you get. Did that experiment work? And if it didn't, try something else and keep trying until you find the things that do work and allow you to connect with your customers.
Great. Next question is, open book management sounds good in theory. Are there examples of companies using it?
Lots of them. Actually, this slide here, let me go back a slide. Hold on a second. There are, like this one, for instance, show me the money, how 4 companies, let me do this and actually just go to that article, see if I can display it. And these links, as I mentioned, will be sent out to the audience. So this is fairly old, but there are certainly newer references, right? So these companies, Baumgar, simple, ambitious goal. I don't know if it's big enough for people to see. I'll just make it a little bigger. Wants his company to sell 1 million licenses for his remote support software. And so he trained his people to understand profitability, cash flow, email dashboards on how many licenses they've sold, right? They even created these 6-foot-tall cylinders for people to sort of shift from every time a license was sold, they'll go from, hey, this is the goal, this is how many licenses we want to sell, to this is how many we actually sold, right? And the idea is to make it transparent, to make it accessible, to make it easy for people to understand and very clear for people to understand where they are and where they need to go. So yeah, I'm not going to go through all of these, but the idea is yes, there's lots of stuff available out there online on open book management, and you just have to look for it.
Great. And just a reminder, I've got one more question lined up. If anyone does have any questions that you would like to ask Kumar, we do still have a little bit of time. So by all means, enter that into the question area in the control panel. But the last question I have for the minute is how can I identify my biggest constraint?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are several workshops, one that we use quite often in the Agile community, and it's really about talking to the people that are involved in whatever the process is, wherever the constraint you feel is, and really analyzing the things that they do as part of this process. There are tools and techniques, some like value stream mapping, for instance, to really sort of figure out the flow of goods, services, information even within different areas of the company. Or it could be the interconnections between the company and your customers. How do customers get your services? It may be interviewing customers to see, well, where is it difficult for them to get information about what you do, or what the services you provide, or the products that you sell. And that's where your bottlenecks are. And so it's about identifying your biggest constraint in that value stream, if you will, or that customer journey, and putting all of your efforts into lifting that constraint. Because if you lift that constraint, then the theory is that for that constraint at least, you've alleviated it, and you're making the customer experience or the internal experience much more efficient. There is, of course, the potential, high likelihood that the constraint will move somewhere else in the value stream. And so it's this relentless pursuit of removing constraints and understanding how your system flows and works in order to remove constraints until your process is as efficient as it can be and your customers are getting value quickly.
Excellent. And actually that concludes the last question. If you don't mind putting up the last slide with some of the classes that you do offer. If someone is looking to explore some of Kumar's teaching, and these are some of the classes that will be offered through ProTech. And I also wanted to remind everybody that, as mentioned, there will be a handout, and we will be editing this recording to send out. So for anyone who was a little late joining or wasn't able to join, we will be sharing that. So on the screen, you will see the list of classes, and please contact ProTech, and protechtraining.com will take you to our website. And you may also reach us via email at the info@protechtraining.com, as well as the phone number there. And we do continue to offer up the regular free webinars on a variety of topics, and we're typically having these every 2 weeks. You will find on our resource section of the website highlighting some of these upcoming webinars. And it also houses our past webinar recordings and some articles and blogs. And our next webinar in 2 weeks' time is how to thrive while leading through change. And you may register for this and the others on our site. So unless you have anything else to add, Kumar, I wanted to thank you on behalf of ProTech for joining us today and for your expertise on this topic. And to wish everybody a good day.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and it was my pleasure.